I guess it's never a dull time to be in Congress. It is a particularly interesting time now. So it's always great to have Louis Gohmert. And listen, we have all of our, close-in Metroplex folks on all the time, as well as some of the folks who are a little bit outlying, folks who go from Metroplex-ish to out there. Roger Williams goes from that Johnson County all the way down to west of Austin. We love having Will Hurd on. But it's great to welcome Brian Babin, freshly elected to a freshly created Texas 36th. Congressman, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. Great to be with you this morning. Beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day, and let's meet you real quick. The 36th district, but you were mayor of Woodville, correct?
I was mayor of Woodville and city councilman, school board member, you name it. I've been it around Tyler County, Texas.
So a lot of people think about running for Congress. You thought about it, and it actually worked out. How'd that happen?
Oh, well, it did. It sure did. We had a vacancy. My predecessor decided to run for another office, and so he took his name off the ballot, left a vacancy, and I had to run against 11 opponents, and I was the last guy standing.
Gotcha. And then there was a famous guy in a famous race. That was when Steve Stockman decided to run for Senate.
That's right.
Gotcha.
That's exactly right.
Well, listen, there's a very specific thing that you have written. It was in the Fox News opinion section. Syria, the refugees, we have something called a refugee resettlement program, and you wrote a great op-ed about that, and I want to touch on it with you. But having just finished up with Louis on this whole speaker thing, can I get your take on that? Because your vote means as much as anybody else's. How did you view the McCarthy exit? Is Paul Ryan okay, or are you looking for somebody else?
Well, I like Paul Ryan. I think Paul Ryan's a fine fellow. Not all conservatives agree with him on some of the issues. I think the bottom line is we've got to get somebody that can unify the House of Representatives. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do. We need unification. We need to be able to fight against the policies of Barack Obama. That is the most important thing that we can do. And we've got to get everybody in the Republican Party on the same page. And I think the leadership has to start listening to the conservative wing more.
No doubt.
That's the bottom line.
So does Ryan strike you as the guy who's been there a while, has the kind of personality and the kind of broad appeal that can be that unifier?
Well, like I said, not everybody is enamored with Paul Ryan, but I can tell you that I know the guy. I've had a good relationship with him. He's helped me on several issues. And I think that Paul Ryan would be a unifying, person in that job. But he may not want it. I talked to him last week personally, and he said he did not want the job.
I hear you there. I hear that too. And I can just hear people saying something. So let me say it to you. Congressman Brian Babin with us from Texas 36. Everybody talks about unifying. And usually when people talk about unifying, they mean unify behind the establishment guy. Unify behind the guy who's been there forever. Here's a crazy idea. How about we take the people who have been there forever, show them there's some new sheriffs in town, and have them unify behind a guy that didn't love TARP and doesn't love amnesty. How about that for unity?
I think that sounds good to me. We've got to start listening. The leadership has got to start listening to the conservative wing of the Republican Party. It goes without saying. It's obvious when you look at the top three or top four candidates for the U.S. presidency and the Republican Party, and you see that three of them have never held office before. And people are mad. They're frustrated. They want to get something done. They're tired of political correctness. They're tired of open borders and out-of-control spending, a foreign policy that's completely out of disjointed, and the refugee situation that I've offered a bill to try to remedy. This refugee situation is going to really damage our national security. It ranks right up there with the Iranian nuclear deal. And so that's why I offered this bill.
Well, let's go ahead and hop into that, because the op-ed you wrote is called Stop the Insanity, Suspend America's Refugee Resettlement Program. This goes back to the Refugee Act just at the end of the Carter years, I understand?
That's right. President Carter signed this crazy law in 1980, which enables, and most Americans have no clue about this, it enables the United Nations to determine who our refugees are going to be. And for the last 6 years of the Obama administration, we have been allowing 70,000 refugees, most of whom are coming from the Middle East, into the United States at taxpayer expense. And then on top of this, they have federal private contractors that decide where these refugees are going, and they will locate them in Baytown, Texas, Amarillo, Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Bangor, Maine, all over the country, and the local populace has very little to no say when it comes to whether they get these people or not and how it's going to work out for them. And so what I'm trying to do, two things. This is what my bill does. It's called the Resettlement Accountability and National Security Act. Two things. The first thing it does, it stops the program until the GAO determines just exactly what the fiscal costs are going to be with this program, because we know that 95% of the people on this program are on federal welfare. And then they get rolled over into the state, local, city governments, and it's costing the American taxpayer big, big time. And then the second thing it does is going to stop the program until we can do a proper assessment of the national security risks. And let me elaborate there, because this is, I think, is as important as anything that we're facing today. Mm-hmm. My job is to protect the Constitution and ensure that my constituents and the people of the United States are safe, that our national security is where it's supposed to be, and they can call me politically incorrect names if they want to, but this is a crazy program that's going to guarantee that we have open doors to ISIS to come into the United States legally and at taxpayer expense and set up bases of operation.
Now, there are about 10,000 Syrian refugees that the president's agreed to take in. You've done some math. Over 70% of them are males between the age of 20 and 30. You call those the exact people who should be staying and fighting for their own country. Only 13% are women. Only 15% are children. And I'm sure people will say, hey, but just a small percentage of them might be ISIS. Well, a small percentage of 10,000 people is enough to kill a lot of Americans.
You bet. And you know what, Mark? We don't have to look any farther than Western Europe to see the no-go zones of the unassimilated whole sections of towns and cities like Paris and London and Copenhagen and Amsterdam, and to see that they have produced 4,000 fighters for ISIS to leave Western Europe and go fight in the Middle East and then come back and bring their jihad home. And then you can also look at the homegrown jihad that we've had here in the United States. We've got the Boston Marathon bombing. We've had a beheading in Oklahoma City. We've had 5 military recruiters gunned down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We had an attack by 2 jihadis in Garland, Texas. And, that had a favorable ending. Those 2 jihadis got what they had coming.
Yeah, that they did.
In Garland, Texas. That's what happens when you do that in Texas.
That's exactly what happens. And thank you once again, Garland PD, and a still unnamed officer whose heroism is known, even though his name is not. Let me give everybody the stuff to Google and the stuff to tell their representatives to support. It is H.R. 3314, 3314, H.R. 3314. Boy, we need a snappy acronym here, Congressman. I don't know. The Resettlement Accountability National Security Act. It works.
And it's RANSA.
Okay.
RANSA, RANSA.
Oh, sure. It's instant acronym. The Resettlement Accountability National Security Act. What is its status? I mean, Republicans run everything. We're supposed to be able to do anything we want. I know Obama's still president and would veto it. Maybe his successor would not. But what is the status of the bill right now?
We have a number of co-sponsors on it right at this time, several from Texas. But I'm going to ask your listeners and you to help us out as well, Mark. A lot of folks and a lot of my colleagues are afraid they're going to be called politically incorrect names for getting on this thing.
Yep.
And you know what? I didn't run for Congress to be politically correct. I just soon lose my election is to wake up years from now and think, man, if I'd have just done something more. I ran for 12 reasons, and those are my 12 grandkids, and I want to make sure they're safe and the rest of the people in this country are safe. And what we need to do is have folks to contact their congressman and tell them to get on H.R. 3314, the Resettlement Accountability National Security Act, and try to pause this program until we can ascertain just how dangerous and a national security risk it is, and also what the cost to the American taxpayer is.
That number
and
again.
We don't
Go ahead.
want the last thing we need in this country is to import the turmoil, the problems, the terrorism of the Middle East right into our neighborhoods in the United States of America.
The fix.
And we can all be good, compassionate Christians, and we can help these people right there where they are in their refugee camps. We're already doing that to the tune of billions of dollars, but don't bring them into the United States. These people need to be returned to their homelands when we get some decent leadership in Washington to defeat ISIS, to join with our allies over there and get rid of these savages once and for all.
And maybe create a stable Middle East that they can live in without coming here.
No question about it. And one last item,
sure.
if you don't mind.
You're
Mark.
on a roll. I'm loving it.
When you think of the most persecuted religious minority in the world today, you've got to realize who it is. It's Christians. And less than 4% of these 70,000 refugees per year coming in, less than 4% of them are Christians. And now the president wants to increase that up to over 100,000 per year. And it is just inexcusable. It's so short-sighted. We will be compassionate Christians and compassionate Americans and help those folks over there, but we don't need to bring those problems into our country.
Congressman Brian Babin's bill is H.R. 3314, the Resettlement Accountability National Security Act. Follow him on Twitter at Rep, as in Representative, Rep Brian Babin, Babin. And it's a pleasure to have you, sir, and I hope we'll do it again soon, and thanks for being with us.
Hey, God bless, Mark. Thank you for your hard work.
It's my pleasure. Hey, listen, you're the guy doing the heavy lifting. Thank you so much. You bet. That was several kinds of awesome. Representative Brian Babin. I knew he existed. I remember when Steve Stockman left that, and that Steve's a piece of work. I love me some Steve, and every once in a while, Steve got a little. Well, never mind. But anyway, Steve, I wish Steve a lot of good things. He ran for Senate, which was never going to work. But that created the vacancy that now gives us Brian Babin. I would suggest that the district is well served. And that's a very, very good idea, by the way. Of course we want to be caring. Of course we want to give Christian love. And of course we want to be good global citizens. But the notion of opening our borders, like leaving the door unlocked and welcoming a whole bunch of people, you have no idea who they are. It's crazy. 8:51, Mark Davis, 660 AM, The Answer.